Putin is done playing around. By now, it is no secret that Russia is weaponizing gas supplies in retaliation for the West's weaponization of currencies. The Kremlin is doing everything in its power to add pressure on Western nations and make the Europeans finally throw in the towel. And they have two main strategies to achieve this. First, they're maintaining uncertainty over the delivery of energy supplies. The truth is that Russia doesn't have to cut flows entirely to cause damage. The prospect of going through the winter without Russian gas is enough to spark chaos in many countries. Secondly, and much more worryingly, it seems that Russian officials are busy stoking social turbulence in places where soaring natural gas prices are forcing households into energy poverty, and many indicators suggest that they are succeeding. That's what we're going to expose today. But before moving on, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with the most important news. Just a couple of days after Russia indefinitely halted the delivery of natural gas via the Nord Stream 1 pipeline for the laughable reason that there was an oil leak, the Kremlin finally admitted that it is weaponizing energy supplies in response to the West's weaponization of currencies by affirming that operations at the pipeline will not resume until the West lift sanctions against Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine. Official spokesman Dmitry Peskov bluntly blamed the US, the UK, Europe, and Canada for enacting sanctions that has resulted in Russia's failure to deliver gas through the key pipeline, which provides supplies to Germany from St. Petersburg via the Baltic Sea. Peskov said the problems pumping gas came about because of the sanctions that Western countries introduced against our country and several companies. According to the Interfax news agency, Peskov continued, saying there are no other reasons that could have caused this pumping problem. Peskov's comments were the most explicit yet by the Kremlin that Western nations must roll back their sanctions in exchange for Russia resuming gas deliveries to European markets. His statement also confirmed that Russia doesn't actually need to export commodities to Europe since it has more than enough demand in China and India. On Friday, Gazprom announced the delivery of gas supplies through Nord Stream 1 would be halted due to a technical fault, mentioning difficulties repairing German-made turbines in Canada, but that turned out to be a smokescreen. The EU was forced to roll back some of the sanctions against Russia to allow the turbines to be repaired. Government heads assured that there was nothing that could prevent Gazprom from supplying the continent with gas other than Russia's weaponization of its energy exports. Right now, Russia is still supplying gas to Western nations via Soviet-era pipelines through Ukraine that have remained open despite the escalating conflict, as well as the South Stream pipeline via Turkey. And in an unexpected twist, the head of the Ukraine gas transit operator told Reuters that Ukraine could technically substitute full capacity of Nord Stream 1 via Ukraine's Sudza entry point. Simply put, the West would have to pay Putin billions for Russian gas transiting through Ukraine, with Russia using the profits to intensify its aggression on Ukraine. But none of this should come as a surprise. Russian officials have made it perfectly clear that they hope the worsening energy crisis plaguing Europe, the UK, and the US would undermine the West's support for Ukraine. Obviously, life is getting worse for people, businessmen, and companies in Europe, Peskov said. Of course, ordinary people in these countries will have more and more questions for their leaders. Notably, Matteo Salvini, the leader of Italy's League Party, who previously noted that Western sanctions against Russia are not working and actually are harming many countries. Now, he's recently suggested that allied nations should reconsider their approach. Speaking at a conference of political leaders Sunday on Lake Como, Salvini claimed the sanctions meant to punish Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine had in fact helped Russia, resulting in an export surplus of $140 billion during the year ending July 2022, Bloomberg reported. Do we have to defend Ukraine? Yes, Salvini stressed, but I would not want the sanctions to harm those who impose them more than those who are hit by them. Meanwhile, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev was even more explicit than Peskov, and after German Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced a €65 billion aid package on Sunday to lessen the shock of record-high energy bills, Medvedev, now deputy chair of Russia's Security Council, said Germany was acting as an enemy of Russia by supporting sanctions against Moscow and helping Ukraine to boost its defense. They have declared that they are against Russia, Medvedev emphasized. And this old man acts surprised that the Germans have some little problems with gas. Unsurprisingly, with neither side willing to step down, moments after Russia's official statement, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen tweeted that Putin is using energy as a weapon by cutting supply and manipulating our energy markets, which, of course, is being done in response to the West's weaponization of currencies and capital flows. Von der Leyen disclosed that the EU is preparing proposals to help ease the burden of high energy prices and aims to reduce electricity demand, price cap on Russian pipeline gas, help vulnerable consumers and businesses with revenue from the energy sector, enable support to electricity producers facing liquidity challenges linked to volatility. But those measures don't seem very reassuring. Geopolitical strategists with Zero Hedge argue that the EU's proposals will not work because Russia will never agree to sell to those imposing price caps, especially since China and India will never join, while ordinary Europeans will never agree to voluntarily sacrifice their own comfort without the knowledge that everyone else is also sharing in the burden. Which is why the announcement by French President Macron calling for a 10% reduction in country's energy use to avoid rationing and cuts this winter will achieve nothing at all, and Europe will have no choice but to ration in a few months as the winter freeze arrives. In other words, all Western nations will continue to suffer. The global energy crisis is likely to reach catastrophic proportions, and higher energy prices will continue to fuel inflation and add more fuel to the cost of living crisis. In Germany, for instance, inflation is set to reach 10% this fall. That's the highest in 70 years, all due to skyrocketing energy costs, according to the country's central bank chief Joachim Nagel. The issue of inflation will not go away in 2023, he said. Supply bottlenecks and geopolitical tensions are likely to continue. As the energy crisis deepens, a recession appears likely next winter. Several industry leaders have warned of devastating economic consequences should Russian gas be cut completely. At this point, all indicators are flashing red for the US, for the UK, and for Europe, where large swathes of the population are falling into energy poverty. Warnings about a global economic downturn this winter are growing louder, but still, governments are still running 3 steps behind, mostly because they spend too much time second-guessing Russia's next moves. Instead, they should be paying closer attention to what Moscow is pushing for: social turbulence. As Bloomberg's European correspondent Maria Tadeo highlighted in a new expose that last week, Medvedev wrote a lengthy post on his Telegram channel in which he urged citizens of Western countries to protest the stupid actions of their governments, namely sanctions, and punish them for it, meaning that they should vote them out. The former president suggested that Western populations want closer ties with Russia, but are misguided by silly politics, while Russia wants cooperation with the people of the West. "Don't stay silent. Russia can hear it," he wrote. Medvedev concluded by suggesting it's warm in Russia, a clear provocation for European leaders as the continent enters a winter of energy scarcity caused precisely by the lack of Russian supplies. Today reported that the post went viral in Italy, with local papers accusing Medvedev of interfering in the election campaign that's underway ahead of next month's vote. Italian politicians suggested that Russia wants to stir social tension. As the League party's Salvini mentioned, the sanctions are directly linked to the cost of living crisis, and a more diplomatic solution is needed to protect households from spending up to 40% of their monthly income on energy in the coming months. According to the geopolitical researcher Joseph Bodner, Russia's goal is to sap the public's confidence in Western sanctions and reduce their support for Ukraine by presenting it as a drag on living standards. Replicating France's Yellow Vest protests, but across Europe, would be the dream scenario for the Kremlin, he said. Social uprisings are a real possibility this winter, one that Western governments should be preparing for instead of sugarcoating, Tadeo stressed. The numbers speak for themselves. In the U.S., 1 in 6 households are at risk of facing utility shutoffs because they can't keep up with rising energy bills. In Germany, where natural gas prices climbed over 700%, average household bills could rise between 500 to 1,000 euros this winter, and this could be a conservative estimate. In France, the government is urging consumers to ration energy. For millions of lower-income families in the West, expensive energy prices would force an impossible choice between buying food or buying fuel. The fact remains that if the West fails to find a comprehensive solution for its population facing financial stress, the impact on our social fabric will be absolutely disastrous.